Hello, good to see you again. Welcome to Block 3, Fractions and Percentages of Amounts. Hmm. Lesson 3. I'll share my screen. So in your previous lesson, you learned how to use a given fraction to find the whole, that is if the whole is not given to you, and to find another given fraction. In today's lesson, you're going to learn how to find the percentage of given amounts using mental methods. It's a very, very important lesson. But I would like to ask you to subscribe to the channel, share the video, like the video, and click on the notification bell so that when new videos are released, you will be notified. By doing that, you help us grow our mission to educate the global population of children who may not have the financial resources to have high quality maths education. Thank you. Before we start, I would like you to answer the trivial practice questions in 3 minutes. Well, assuming you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So if we ask to write 10% as a fraction in its simplest form, we can do it in, by writing 10 out of 100. Remember, percentage is 10 is out of 100. So we can do this and then simplify. We'll see that is 1/10. But another way of thinking about it is to say, well, 10%, if you were to look at your 100 square grid, 10% means 10 bars out of 10. So if you were to split those 100 squares into 10 parts, you actually have 1/10. Okay, that's what 10% means. 20 means you are going to have 5 lots of 20s out of the 100 square. This will be a quarter because you're going to have 5 lots of 25s. 4 lots of 25s. So 25% is a quarter. And then 50% is a half. So we're going to use this information to do some really clever things in this lesson. So here is this example. If you're asked to match the percentage calculations with the bar models, you begin to see why our first retrieval practice questions were really useful. So 10% splits things into 10 equal parts because we say it's 1/10. All right, so it matches with that one. 20% matches with that one, splits it into 5 equal parts. 25% into 4 equal parts, and 50% into 2 equal parts. So in general, what you need to know is that if you're asked to find 10% of any amount, you're just required to split that amount into 10 equal parts or just divide that amount by 10. If you're asked to find 20% of any amount, then what you really need to do is to divide that amount by 5. If you're asked to find 25% of an amount, what you simply do is you divide that amount by 4. And if you're asked to to find 50% of an amount, all you have to do is to divide that amount by 2. So these are really important concepts you need to take note of. So let me write what we have just learned in general. Okay. So if you're finding 20%, why? You can see we split things into 5 equal parts. All right. So this is a bit like using a bit of your knowledge of fractions of amounts. Is to divide by 4. This to divide by 2. Okay. So this is a very important concept. All right. So now if you're asked to find 10% of 120, you should know what to do. 120 divided by 10, which is 12. 20%. Oh, 120 divided by 5, which is 24. 25% of 120. Oh, 25% of 120. 120 divided by 4. That's 30. 50% of 120. Oh, we have it. Or divide by 2, which is 60. So these are important facts you need to know. Now, we can use multiplicative relationships to find percentage of certain amounts we may not know. So, for example, if we already know that 10% of 120 is 12, to get 20%, you can see that 20% is double of 10%. It means we need to double our answer, which is 24. If we're asked to find 5% of 120, we may think, well, 5% is actually half of 10%. So we can actually have 12 to give us 6. So 5% of 120 is 6. So we're using the multiplicative relationship between what we already know, which is 10%, to find other percentages. What about this one? 15%. We could say, well, we could make 10%, use 10% and 5% to make 15%. So if we add 10% and 5%, we'll make 15%. And that will be adding 12 plus 6, which is 18. Another way of thinking about it is to say, well, we can multiply 5 by 3 to get 18. So there are different ways to solve the problem. Okay, it's now time for you to pause the video and have a practice of what you've learned. So pause the video and answer questions 1 and 2 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. Okay, so these are really straightforward, knowing what percentages of amounts, what they actually mean in terms of division or in terms of representing them in a bar model. That's what this is showing you. And then this one, question 2, to find 10% of a number, you divide by 10. So to find 5% of a number, you divide by 5. Of course, that's not true. To find 5%, you find 10% and you have the 10%. Pause the video and answer questions 3 and 4 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 3 and 4, here are the answers. Okay, so here, 50% is to halve, 25% is to divide by 4. So to divide by 4 is to halve and halve again. So imagine having 150, which is 75, and you have 75 again. That's why you have £37.50. Then to find 75%, you can have 3 lots of that to get this. All right. And then these are the answers for the other ones. All right. Here, to find 75%, here she says, of a number, you can work out 25% and multiply this value by 3. That's exactly what we said. How many other ways could you find 75% of a number? Well, we could find 75% by adding these two. Have you noticed that? So 50% add 25% will give us 75%. Pause the video and answer question 5 in 3 minutes. You could take longer. You could take 4 minutes, work at your own pace. All right. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So here, 3%, you can find 1%. Okay. There's something I want to show you. Sometimes, although I haven't mentioned it, to find 1% of any amount, you divide by 100. Okay. So if I divide this by 100, that will be 10.2. And then 3 lots of 10.2 will be 30.6. Okay. So here you were asked to use the calculations on the right to help you work out the calculations on the left. So here you can see 6%, you just halve this one to get that one. This one, you just times this by 10 to get this one. This one, you just find 100%, which is the whole lot, 100%, and you take 5% from 100%. So if 5% is of 126, to find 95%, you just do 120 minus 6. This one, you already know 1%. Okay, so to find 99%, you just do this amount minus 8. Okay, so these are some really clever ways to work out percentage. All right, let's do some new learning. Sometimes you could be given percentages of amounts like this, and then you're required to use that knowledge to find other percentages. Okay, so for example, we know that 100% of 130, okay, 100% of any amount is that same amount. So 50% will be half, 25% will be to divide that amount by 4, which is to halve and halve again. 20% will mean to divide that amount by 5. 10% will be to divide that amount by 10. And 5% will be to divide what you get out of 10% by 2, which will give you 6.5. Okay, now if we want to find 75%, we can do it by adding 50% to 25%. Okay? Or you can find 25% and multiply it by 3. Either way, we'll get the same answer. If we want to find 45%, we can do it in different ways. We can say, well, let's add 25% and 20%. Or someone else might say, well, let's find 50% and take away find 5% and then take away 5% from 50%. In either way, we'll get the same answer. What about 17.5%? Well, to make fractions like this, there are different ways we can do it. One person might say, well, let's find 2.5% of 130 first, because we already know 5%. If we have 5%, we'll get 2.5. Now we can begin to add these, because when we add 10 to 5 and then 2.5, that will give us 17.5%. So adding these amounts will give us this. Now, what we're learning is really useful because it's a mental method of doing percentage calculations. So you won't be required to use calculators when you're giving questions like this. All right, let's look at the last example of our lesson. What if we're given sometimes if we ask, what is the percentage of a specific amount that results in another amount? The way to think about it is to say, well, if 80 has to be the whole lot, yeah, is the whole amount. How many of these can we get from here? Of course, is 50%, okay? So 50% each way. So which means 50% of 80 is what gives us 40. Let's look at another example. It will make a lot more sense. All right. 80 is always the full amount, right? So next question you're going to ask, how many lots of 20 could we have got from 80? Remember, 80 is always the full amount. Okay, the quantity you are working with is always 100%. So how many lots of this do you get from 80? You say, well, it's actually 5. So it means that, it's to have, it's 4. Yeah. So it means another way of thinking about it is 100 divided by 4. It means this is actually worth 25%. Remember, this is always 100%. So it is 100 divided by how many lots of these we can get from that, which is 4. Okay. So which is to halve and halve again. Let's look at another one. If we want to find what percentage of 80 is equal to 10, we can do, this is like an inverse way of thinking about it. Same thing. We say, okay, how many lots of 10 can we get from 80? You say, all right, it's 8, yeah? So we can get 8 lots. So it means we need to divide, all right, because 80 divided by 10, remember that's what we did here. 80 divided by 20 is 4. 80 divided by 40 is 2. There is always 100%. So 80 divided by 10 is 8, which means to get the actual percentage that we worked out, we'll do 100 divided by 8. Okay? To divide by 8 means to halve, and to halve. So you halve again, you halve again, and you halve again. Yeah? All right. Which is 12.5. Okay, look at this one. If somebody asks you what percentage of 80 is equal to 8, you think, okay, there's always 100%, which is this 80. Well, let's find out how many lots of 8 can we get from 80. So 80 divided by 8 is equal to what? 10. You say, okay, so if I had a 100 bar, a bar which is 100%, I'm going to have to split that bar into 10 equal parts because 80 divided by 8 is 10. And that's what we've been doing. So we use the same approach. Okay. So 100 divided by 10 is 10%. So the amount, the percentage is 10%. All right. It's now time for you to pause the video and practice what you've learned. So pause the video and answer questions 6 and 7 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 6 and 7, here are the answers. So here you ask, how many more rectangles need to be shaded so that 75% of the shape is shaded? So 75 means 3/4, yeah? So when you look, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 4 by 5 is 20. So 3/4 will be, we have to shade 3 more, okay? And then how many shaded rectangles is needed to, how many shaded rectangles need to be unshaded so that 30% of the shape is shaded? So 30% means 3 out of 10. So remember you have 20. So if you were to work this out, so 30%, sorry, 50%. Am I seeing something? So 50%. So remember, 50%, you have how many shaded? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay? But to get 50%, you only need 10 shaded because there are 20 squares. So it means we need to unshade 2. This one, how many more rectangles need to be shaded so that 5% of the shape is not shaded? Right? So it means we need 95%. So 10% of 20 is 1/10. Yeah. So which means 20 divided by 10. Remember, to find 1/10, you need to divide by 10. So 20 divided by 10 is 2. Okay. So 5% will be half of 2. So 10% of 20 is 2. 5% will be half of that, which is 1. So they're asking us how many more rectangles need to be shaded so that 5% of the shape is not shaded. It's 7 because we only need 1 not to be shaded. So we're going to shade this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we don't need to shade 1 like I showed you here. And then here, Mrs. Hall has 700 pounds in her bank account. She spends 45% of her money on rent. How much money does she have left? Okay, so we use, again, our mental method to solve a problem like this. So to 45%, we can do different things. We can say, well, what if we find 50%, find 5%, and just subtract one from the other? Yeah. So we know 50% of 700 is 350 pounds. Why? Because we know 50% is just to have something. So 50% is 350 pounds. We know 10% is to divide by 10. So 700 divided by 10 is 70. So 10% is 70. Okay. And then half of 70 will be 5%. So half of 70 is, so 5% is half of this 70. Yeah. Half of 10 is 5. 5% is half of 70, which is 35. So 45% will be 350 minus 35. Okay. Which will be 315. All right. So that's the amount she's going to have left. So she's going to have, how much money does she have left? 315. Okay. Because we have just found 45%. Okay. Sorry, 45% is what we found. So if she spends 315, sorry, I made a mistake. So what she has left will be 700 minus 315. And then you solve this, you get your answer. All right. Pause the video and answer questions 8 and 9 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So here you can see how, let's just explain quickly how we got some of these answers. So here you see that they're asking us what percentage of 60 is equal to 15. Remember what we did? You say, okay, how many lots of this can you get from that? Because this is always 100%. The amount you're trying to check what percentage of it gave you this. So we know that 4 lots of 15 will be equal to 60. So to find out the percentage, we have to divide 100% by 4. This one, 2 lots of 15 makes 30. So to find the amount, we have to divide 100 by 2, which is 50. This one, I think 6 lots of, because that's 4 lots. No, that's 2 lots, 30. Yeah. So 6 lots, of, so 15, 30, and then so 2 times, and then 4 lots, no, 8. So 8 lots of that will give us 120. So it means we need to divide 100 by 8 to get the percentage. Okay. Next, you ask, work out 95% of 800. So there are different ways to do this. You're being asked which method did you use. So you could find 10%. 10% of 800 is to divide by 10, which is 80. You have that will give you 40. All right. So you now have 40 as 5% of 800. And then since you know 5%, to get 95% is to take 5% from 100. So that will be 800 minus 40, which is 760. All right, pause the video and answer questions 10 and 11 in 4 minutes. All right, assuming you have paused the video and answered the questions, here are the answers. So I don't want the video to be too long. We're not going to spend time going through this in much detail. So here are the answers. Mark your work and celebrate your success. So I'll just talk about a few. So here, we're told to find the values, okay? So we're told that 50% of this amount is equal to 0.75. So this is a bit like, doing, if you remember, this is a bit like doing fraction of amounts where we're finding the whole when we know the actual um, results. So one way of thinking about it is 50% is half. So it's a bit like saying half of something we don't know is equal to 0.75. Okay. Now, if you think about it, so it's a bit like saying, well, if I draw this and we have, remember the denominator always tells us how many there are. So if half, okay, one lot out of this, because that's what half means. If one lot out of the two is 0.75, it means this is 0.75 and this is 0.75. Now, 0.75 plus 0.75 will be, all right, will be equal to 1.5. Okay, so the whole lot should be 1.5. So that should be 150. All right, or 1.5. So that should be 1.5. Now, if that is 1.5 and you're being told that, so you can now put 1.5 there. And then you can now start working this out to say, okay, 10% of something you don't know is 1.5. So you use the same idea to work your way up all the way till you get the other result. And you can see it here, how we got that 1.5. Okay. All right. So that brings us, let's see, this one. So for this one, we have 1/5 of 1 equals, so this is similar to what we worked out. So 80% of that. So you work that amount and then you use the inverse of, what we did before during when we were working with using a known fraction to find the whole, just like we did here. You'll find that value there. So I don't want this video to be too long. I'm going to stop here. All right. So really well done for sticking around. So what we've learned so far, a really very important concept is knowing mental methods of finding percentages of amounts and also extending our learning to know how to find an unknown percentage value when we know the actual amounts that the percentage yielded. It's a very important concept in doing reverse percentage problems. Okay, until next time, take really good care of yourself and bye-bye.